Ni hao. Hey everyone. This is Veni Folta, and I'm excited to be a part of Humans of Telecom.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Humans of Telecom, the Unplugged podcast. This is your host, Anurag Aggarwal. As you all know, this is where we shift the spotlight from technology to the people behind it, uncovering the stories, perspectives, and life experiences that truly define this industry. And today's guest is someone who feels the perfect embodiment of that idea. From the very first interaction, I felt she represents what Humans of Telecom stands for at its core. With nearly 30 years in telecom, including close to 2 decades leading international roaming partnerships, she has experienced the intensity, the pace, and constant evolution of this space firsthand. But what makes her journey truly remarkable is what she chose to do with those experiences. Today, she works out at the intersection of neuroscience and leadership, helping telecom professionals navigate burnout, decision fatigue, and the complexities of an AI-driven world. Her work is rooted in a simple but powerful belief that when people thrive, performance follows. An international speaker, best-selling author, and a strong advocate for more human, balanced workplaces, she brings both insight and empathy into everything she does. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Veni Folta, Chief Happiness Officer at the Inspired Action Group. Veni, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this journey. We'd love to hear more about you, which part of the world do you belong to, and from where are you joining this podcast today?
Thank you, Anurag. This is so important that we have this conversation. And I'm joining you today from Seattle, Washington. However, my life began on the other side of the world when my parents moved from one European colony to another. I was born in Portuguese Macau, then moved to British Hong Kong until I eventually ended up in a larger British colony, the United States. And I've lived in the US for most of my life. And as you're in India, I guess you and I share some British colonial connections.
Absolutely. I can totally agree to that. And I remember visiting Macau, and yes, there were traces of the British rule, which are still quite intact over there. And I could feel those resonating with things back here in India. So, Vinny, it's amazing to have you on the show. And I did briefly touch upon your journey, but let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Over 3 decades within the telecom space. And today you have a very fascinating title, the Chief Happiness Officer, something that I think we could all do with. So let's understand your journey. How did you get into the world of telecom? What's your journey been like? And how has it taken you to where you are today?
Well, thank you. I shared my telecom journey in my book, which was released in January 2025. Writing that book helped me see how the long-term evolution in my career mirrored the different evolution of mobile technology, from barely 1G when I first started to 4G and, of course, 5G now. The title of my book, I Quit: How to Lose Your Job and Find Your Dream Career, was born out of the pattern I started seeing in my life as I was writing the book. Every time I lost a job or made a career pivot, even in my same company, I was led to something even better than I could have ever imagined. And ironically, my telecom journey began with losing what I thought was my dream job. I was in my 20s managing the US headquarters of a Japanese company in South Florida when the one-in-a-century Category 5 Hurricane Andrew devastated the region. The company I worked for sustained millions in property damages and shut down operations. And just like that, I lost my dream job. So I packed up, drove across the country, and moved back to Seattle. That's where I landed my first role at Sprint's regional office, which launched my 30-year career in telecom, including, as you mentioned, 2 decades in international roaming. And by the way, I Quit is not about leaving your current job, as I have helped many of my clients stay in the same company, in their telecom company, whether it's refining their current role or find a role that is aligned with their strengths and preferences. It just means asking yourself, why do I do what I do? And It's like the Japanese concept of Ikigai. Ikigai is doing work that you love, that you are good at, that the world needs, and that you can be paid for. And it's not just a career model. It's a sole purpose or your dharmic imperative. So that's what I do, why I do what I do right now.
Interesting, Vinny. So, a book which is titled I Quit. I think that's quite an interesting title. And yes, you are actually explaining how to lose your job but find your dream career. And I think that's so important that I think in today's transactional world, one is switching from one job to the other, whereas there is actually a much longer view, which I think we should hold into our hearts when we are taking these career moves. So actually, it's a career that we should look at rather than just the one rut of a job that we often get into. So totally understand where you're coming from. And within this journey, what has been a very memorable or impactful moment? Is it when you released your book or is it something else?
Well, actually, the change, the most impactful chapter of my telecom career was during the pandemic in 2020. And because travel stopped, right, during that time, as you know, international roaming came to a halt. Every MNOs and service providers, everybody's revenue plummeted. And just like many of my colleagues, I was navigating stress, a lot of uncertainty, and of course, social isolation at that time. And that became a turning point for me because I had been studying neuroscience and cognitive positive psychology for about a decade by then. And so I know some tools already. Then I took a 4 months course because I didn't have to fly as much to learn how to be happier, really. And then I even became a certified happy for no reason trainer, which has led to my job right now because I realized how practicing the science-backed tools that I learned over the years have alleviated my stress and improved my overall well-being. And I decided, Zoom just came out. So I bought a Zoom account and started offering free virtual workshops to teach these same tools to local professional women's groups, other groups. And then I invited some of my global roaming partner colleagues to join in these free webinars. And I think that was my pivot because I realized everybody was really craving for connection when they're physically isolated from everyone. And everybody's seeking their well-being, but more so a deep and genuine connection with people. So because that decision, just out of service, that was my seed for my second calling, which is doing my job right now as the Chief Happiness Officer to bring human-centric, brain-based leadership in a tech-driven, AI-disrupted world. Because at the end of the day, it's not about connecting global networks. It's about connecting people, just like what you're doing, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely. I totally agree on that. And it's good to see a lot of people talk about how they stumbled into the telecom career. But in your case, as you said, that the second career that you moved on to, your career shift, that happened by chance. So good. Either ways, destiny did bring you to where you are today.
Yes.
All right. And now, Vinny, let's move on I typically say from the telecom side to the human side. But in your case, what you're doing right now is also so human. But let's talk specifically about Vinny, the person. So, Vinny, is there something very surprising or shocking or unknown about you that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think when I was looking back, when I was at Verizon, I organized a team building activity that involves 10 of us jumping out of an airplane at 14,000 feet. That was over 25 years ago. But it taught me a lifelong lesson. If you want to build trust fast, do something fun and meaningful outside of work together. So that was my moment.
Interesting. And where did you do this skydiving?
So at that time, I was working at the branch in Saipan, which is a U.S. Commonwealth. And so we were diving around skydiving at sunset over the coral reef, tropical island. It was just the perfect backdrop. Everybody from people in their 30s to in their 70s. So
Interesting. I'm sure that must have been a fantastic experience.
Yes.
Awesome. And beyond that, on a daily basis, on a regular basis, how do you recharge yourself? What are your passions and hobbies like?
Well, I like to write and I like to really study the brain, to be honest. I spend a lot of time doing a lot of research. But one of the things that I found most grounding for myself is practicing mindfulness meditation. I do it in the morning and, as well as in the evening, because I have found that it helps me release emotional clutter and stay centered. And on warm days, I love having lunch in my backyard, writing and reading. And I'm also drawn to spiritual travel. What I mean by that is I've walked 2 UNESCO pilgrimages, the Camino de Santiago in Spain and the Kumano Kodo in Japan. And these journeys gave me the time and the space to reflect and keep me grounded in what matters and keep my body strong.
Wonderful. I think that's a whole host of interesting things you do. And I think that not only helps you recharge your mind and your body, but it makes you recharge your soul. And I think that's so important to have a balance across all these various aspects of life.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. And now, Winnie, we're on to a very interesting question. So, two truths and a lie. You need to share 3 statements with us about your life. 2 of them have to be truths, one of them has to be a lie. And I would like to believe that these statements in your case can be very interesting and maybe there is some human angle also to them. So let's hear them and let's see if I can guess which one of them is a lie.
Sure. First, I rode a camel across the desert outside of Dubai. Or I snorkeled between 2 tectonic plates in freezing water. And finally, I met the president of Iceland at a national park.
All right. So must say you really have lived up to this question. 3 very interesting statements and it's going to be a tough job for me. So riding a camel across the desert outside of Dubai, snorkeling between 2 tectonic plates in freezing water, and meeting the president of Iceland in a national park. Okay. So, well, knowing that you've also done a fantastic experience of skydiving, I would actually believe all 3 of them are true in your case. But just for the sake of this question, I'm going to say that yes, you have ridden a camel across the desert outside of Dubai. Okay. I'm going to presume that's true. And you have snorkeled between 2 tectonic plates in freezing water. That'll be an interesting story as well. And just for the sake of this question, I'm going to presume that the third one is a lie. So possibly you've not met a former president of Iceland in a national park. So let's see. Am I right out here?
Well, you're very close, but unfortunately, that is not the correct answer.
Okay. So let's hear it from you.
Okay. So when I said I rode a camel across the desert of Dubai, as many of you have been to Dubai and maybe have gone out to one of the tours, I only sat on the camel to take a photo. So I was not able to do that. So that was the lie.
Okay. And how was the snorkeling experience like?
Well, that was amazing. That was in Silva actually it was in Iceland at the national park. So I've heard about it, the 2 tectonic plates that met there. And I found out that you can actually snorkel. So I went and snorkeled in there, went on with some people. And it was very cold, so I was really frozen. And then, of course, I met the former president of Iceland. And that was last summer.
And was the president also snorkeling with you only in the national park?
No. Actually, I will send you my LinkedIn post because it was just a chance encounter.
Uh-huh.
He represented servant leadership. He got off of his post as president and immediately volunteered as a park ranger at the national park. And if you know that Iceland, the whole parliament was started at the national park. Iceland is not separation of church and state. So the church was right next to the parliament, the old parliament. And the president was in front of the church and he was answering my questions about some of the history. And then later on, he led on to say that I'm actually the former president. And I was like, Oh my goodness.
That's amazing. So you have had some very interesting experiences, and Dubai and Iceland both are poles apart, but it's good to see that you had your fair share of experiences in both these environments. All right. And the final question of this section, Vinny, in case there is any one thing you could change about your life, what would that one thing be?
Well, I've always aimed to live life with no regrets. But if I could change one thing, though, it would be learning to tend to my own needs sooner, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Because for years, I thought self sacrifice and taking care of everything else, everyone else, is strength. And I saw self care as selfish or even indulgent. But over the years, I've learned from my share of health crises, from cancer to depression to bleeding in my brain from a concussion, that overextending myself has serious and potentially fatal consequences. But if I regularly tend to my physical and mental health well-being, then I'm a better leader, a better mom, and overall better human when I serve others from a full cup. So that said, I realize all my experiences really brought me onto my current path to teach others to lead from the same place of balance, harmony, and intention in what they do. So they don't feel they have to be alone in their struggles. So that's my purpose right now.
No, I think this makes so much sense, Vinny, because I know that self love often can be mistaken as being selfish. But yes, I know that, like you said, to be able to serve with a full cup. So until and unless your own cup is full, serving others around you becomes a challenge. So I think the concept of self love also and self care is something which is picking up a lot more. And I'm hoping that maybe through this answer of yours, to some extent, it's a wake up call for some of the listeners, and maybe they give a lot more importance to their own selves as much as they give to the ecosystem around them. So well said.
Thanks.
All right. And now we are down to our final question, our signature question. Though we've been talking a lot about this already, but let's hear a sign off note from you. What does being human mean to you? What sort of a human being would you want the world to remember you as?
Yeah, being human to me means embracing imperfection and choose joy and living your truth authentically. Howard Thurman once said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I want to be remembered as someone who helped others come alive, who gave people permission to break old patterns, rewire their brain, reclaim their agency and their power, and to live with kindness, purpose, and adventure.
I think that's such a fantastic thought to end this conversation, Vinny. And that sense of feeling alive, I think they say that as much as it's important to have years in your life, it's important to have life into those years. And the world is always out there to try to put you into a mold just the way the world wants you to be. But
Yeah.
it is so important to break from those shackles and actually live a full life in whatever yardsticks that you set for yourself. So I think that's a fantastic thought. And I do feel that through the efforts that you're putting in and all your ongoing activities, you are actually helping achieve what you want to be known for as a human being. And thank you so much for taking out time. We've been having a chat for, I think, almost a year now. And I'm so glad that we could finally have you on the show. And I do hope very soon, hopefully, if possible, we do end up crossing paths as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for hosting. And I'm really feeling honored and privileged to be on your show, to share the human side. And of course, I'm hoping that you will join my human intelligence panel discussion over at Rocco's Genesis. And look forward to seeing you in person and give you a big, big hug.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Winnie. And yes, for all our listeners here, we are planning to release this episode a week before the Rocco Genesis, which is taking place in June in the wonderful town of Limerick in Ireland. And Winnie will be there as one of the key anchors of the event. And if you are moved by the conversations we've had today, and in case if you're around there, I do hope you get a chance to catch up with Veni in person and get to know a lot more about this fantastic human being. So thanks a lot, Veni. Thanks a lot for your time. And as always, to our wonderful listeners here, thanks a lot for tuning into the show. We hope this episode gave you a good glimpse of the human side of Veni Folta. Originally from Macau, having lived across East Asia and now based in the US. Someone who has witnessed the evolution of telecom firsthand, all the way from 1G to our current 5G. An accomplished author and a curious mind, deeply invested in understanding how the brain works. Someone who embraces mindfulness, meditation, and spiritual travel as a way of life. And finally, at a very core, someone who truly embodies what it means to be human, in thought, in action, and in purpose. That for us is Veni Folta. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, do stay tuned in, because we shall soon be releasing yet another episode and another compelling story from the telecom space. And do follow the podcast on your preferred streaming channel. On behalf of Humans of Telecom, this is your host Anurag Aggarwal signing off for now. Take care.